Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar.
And I'm Yuksen.
We are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, and this month we will be discussing the backbone of the Imperium of Man, the Astra Militarum.
Indeed, and this week we will be discussing the weirdos, the goofballs, the Abhumans.
Indeed, but you might be wondering, what is an Abhuman?
Well, an Abhuman is, by definition, a descendant of baseline human settlers whose ancestors mutated and physically adapted to various extreme environmental conditions after being isolated for thousands of standard years on colony worlds across the galaxy. Mind you, some Abhumans may also be intentionally genetically engineered mutants created for a specific purpose. Now, the most important Abhumans to the Imperium are the Navigators, and here to tell you about them is Zeckthar.
Okay, before I do, here's, I guess, a question anyway. So are Abhumans mutants?
They would be kind of defined as mutants since they have, in a sense, mutated from what a normal human is.
Okay, but when I say mutants, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Abhumans. I'm talking about like mutants. Chaos warped dudes.
No.
The mutants. So they are not mutants. So what is the difference between the two?
Well, first of all, they aren't necessarily tainted by chaos.
Right. I mean, they can be. Well, anybody can be. But, I mean, what makes them, anyways, their mutations different and acceptable in Imperial society as opposed to a Chaos mutant? And as we know, anyways, not all Chaos mutants are actually, like, fighting for Chaos. They've just been mutated by the warp. Doesn't necessarily make them evil either.
No.
But they get exterminated by the Imperium. So that's why I'm asking.
They have been deemed as mutated by the warp, whereas these others are not deemed as having been mutated by the warp. They've been mutated by an environment and surrounding conditions.
Okay. So I want you to put a pin in that thought process here. As I talk about the Navigators.
Which completely defy what I just said. But they are necessary for the continuation of the militarum, which of course, you know, is a very common thing we have found in the Imperium, haven't we?
Yeah. That's okay. So
we have solid, fast rules, except for in this particular way.
Yuksen, I want you to put a pin in that because we will get back to that conversation here in a minute. But I do kind of have to explain who the Navigators are.
Okay.
Do I really have to talk about the Navigators? Why don't you do it? I hate the Navigators.
But I thought you would like talking about the Navigators.
Nah, not really. I mean, I've always found them to be rather creepy. Not to mention that most of the ones that I've personally read about have turned to chaos and quite frankly are the what's one I'm looking for? The worst human beings imaginable. Anywho, a Navigator is a very particular form of the Imperial sanctioned human mutant who possesses the Navigator gene. This gives a Navigator the unique ability to navigate a faster-than-light starship accurately through warp space to emerge safely at another point in real space. This ability makes Navigators absolutely essential to the Imperium's continued survival and to all human interstellar transportation, communication, and commerce. All Navigators have a third eye, commonly called the warp eye, on their foreheads, which allows them to perceive the psychic light projected by the Emperor from Terra known as the Astronomicon, enabling them to fully use their powers in guiding human starships through the currents of the warp. Their ability to sense the tides of the warp is considered a psychic power, although Navigators never possess any psychic abilities beyond the powers their warp eye affords them. Navigators possess natural lifespans of as much as 400 Terran years. As they increase in age, their ability increases in power, and their physical appearance changes. The white and iris of the third eye gradually disappear, leaving only a hardened black orb. Now, all Navigators belong to a large group of noble families, based on Terra in the great district of that world city known as the Navigators' Quarter. These dynasties are known collectively as the great families of the Navis Nobilite. Now, one of the reasons the Imperium doesn't like them is because they are obviously mutants in an imperial culture that does not often suffer the mutant to live, save as a brutally oppressed underclass. Many dark legends and fables of excess, witchery, and murderous power have grown up about them, and not all without cause. As a result, navigators are often shunned and feared, and the popular dread at meeting the gaze of their threefold eyes means that many prefer to have dealings with them only when they absolutely must. The maintenance of the valuable recessive navigator gene through selective breeding has also meant that over thousands of standard years, many navigator families have acquired malformations, strange afflictions, or mental abnormalities. While some attribute these maladies to inbreeding and the close-knit relation between navigator families, it's more likely that the navigator gene itself causes genetic instability and mutation as a navigator grows in power and age. As a navigator ages and suffers from increasing exposure to the immaterium, the likelihood of suffering from mutation also grows exponentially. To offset the fickle nature of the navigator gene, many navigator houses rigorously screen the genetic material of their members and use gene scryers to determine the best match between young navigators when marriages are arranged. In addition to the gene scryers, the use of divination tools like the Emperor's Tarot are employed to ensure no psychic taint threatens to destabilize the house's gene pool. The most ancient and traditional houses often use their considerable resources to maintain strict control of their bloodlines through careful arranged unions, which has made them more resilient to the symptomatic genetic instability that plagues lesser houses.
You mean inbreeding, right?
Yep. Others, however, have either neglected such strict control or have tampered with the gene pool of their bloodlines to produce more powerful and skilled progeny. Inevitably, though, this has led to considerable instability to some of the dynasties. In some navigator families, the genetic corruption of the line has become so severe that only a few members of the clan can move amongst the rest of the Imperium. The remainder remain confined to the family's great estate or sealed tabernacles aboard ships, their extreme deformities hidden from sight. These differences have often led to conflict in the past, and localized factions of the ecclesiarchy have, on a number of zealous occasions, burned navigator holdings and executed navigators as heretics. Such incidences are often brought violently to heel by the ecclesiarchy itself, before the wrath of the High Lords of Terra is visited upon the culprits and any above them in rank that allows such actions to come to pass. After all, no one can afford to offend those who hold the Imperium's only key to voyaging between the stars. The Inquisition is one of the few bodies that can truly move with impunity where the navigators are concerned, and its eye is ever kept on the navigator clans. Yet even the Inquisition must be circumspect and certain in this task. However, in extreme cases, the Holy Ordos have destroyed entire houses and carried their patriarchs and matriarchs off in the black ships for final sanction when necessary. Well, before we move on into the more interesting Abhumans, you got anything to say about these guys, Yuksen? And back to that pin that we put in our conversation.
Well, like I told you, this is another one of those situations where they decide to one of their exceptions to the rules.
We absolutely, no matter what, will not tolerate this. Well, what about these guys? Okay, except for those guys.
Why?
What you're saying?
Well, they're beneficial. Oh.
Yeah, how long do you want to be stuck in space before you get to the next planet? That's what it really
You
boils
want
down
to
to.
die on the voyage of old age?
Well, the other thing, though, that's kind of, I will say that's interesting about the Navigators. Navigators have been around for a really long time, though, too. I mean, they were around during the time of the Emperor. And it was one of those few ones, anyways, because remember, the Emperor had this whole, like, the warp doesn't exist, the Imperial truth thing going. Those are the only guys, and he made sure that they didn't really talk to anybody. That was just kind of like, leave them alone. And it was like, but weren't you going to tell them about the warp? No, shh. None of that. But yeah, so I think, anyways, what I'm trying to get at here too, though, is that most abhumans, these are the only guys that I can think of that are an exception. But most abhumans, it has very little to do with the warp, anyways, with their mutations. It has to do more with an environmental aspect.
Yeah.
and thousands of years, anyways, being stuck in a place. And we're going
Right.
to talk about the Ogryns and the Ratlings and the Beastmen. They all, anyways, it's not a warp infused mutation.
No.
Kind of like what you said, but the I think the key factor is just the kind of concept that it's not even really necessarily a mutation; it's an evolution.
Yeah.
Of
Kind
particular
of like
humans on different planets.
the squats, who we are not going to talk about.
The Scots who are
They
not
became shorter due to massive amount of gravity on the planets that they end up inhabiting.
yeah, but
But
the next people
who
that
are
we would be
going to
talking about, which would be the Ogryns. Now, the Ogryns, also known as Homo sapiens giganticus, are huge and physically powerful abhuman mutant subspecies of humanity, often employed in the Imperium of Man as shock troopers by the Austra Militarum. Now, Ogryns possess many traits prized by the Imperium. They are brutally strong and completely loyal, although extremely limited intellectually, which restricts their battlefield role to simple and direct assaults. We'll get back to that in a minute. The Ogryns are the toughest and largest soldiers commonly used by the regiments of the Austra Militarum. Originating from cold, barren, high-gravity prison planets, settled many millennia before the foundings of the Imperium of Man, the Ogryns' distant ancestors were once normal, baseline humans during the Age of Technology. Thousands of standard years in the harsh terrains and brutal living conditions of their prison worlds after the start of the Age of Strife caused the fall of the first interstellar civilization of mankind, forcing their ancestors' bodies to adapt to their hostile environment by growing in size and strength, though at the cost of their intellectual development. Ogryns compensate for their mental deficiencies with overwhelming physicality. The brutish creatures stand around 10 feet tall and can shrug off wounds that would kill an Imperial guardsman several times over. These qualities mean that Ogryns make exceptional shock troops and are often deployed on the front lines of battle by Imperial commanders. It is fair to say that Ogryns do have their limitations. Their equipment must be simple and exceptionally rugged, as anything within arm's reach is likely to see brief and violent service as an improvised club. It's like, no, point it that way, but the back end hits better. Don't care. Anyways, their heavily built Ripper guns must also be fitted with burst limiters to stop the Ogryns from firing ceaselessly. 30 solar seconds of noisy enjoyment can easily leave these abhumans short of ammunition before the battle has even really begun. Now, I know the Ripper gun is one of your favorites, Yuksen. You mind explaining it a little bit before I keep going?
Certainly. It is a heavy automatic shotgun built as simply and solidly as possible in order to survive being used by the Ogryn, who use it as much as a club as a firearm. It can fire either a heavy shell or a hail of shot. By design, the Ripper gun does not have a long range because the Ogryn's instincts are for close combat. So in other words, they need something that can actually fire, but they're expecting it to actually, be aimed really.
Right. And you said this is like an automatic shotgun?
Yeah, it can either fire a heavy shell or just basically large shot blasts.
So it's like, okay, so it can fire either like buckshot or slugs.
Yeah.
Okay. well, thank you for that, Yuksen. I appreciate it. But, getting back to the Ogryns. Due to their low intelligence, Ogryns are easily confused, meaning they work best when given simple, straightforward missions, and their lack of personal hygiene borders on criminal. However, once indoctrinated into the Imperial Creed, they are doggedly loyal, and their strength and resilience make them a potent weapon. Now, occasionally, one of the dumb brutes isn't so dumb, and such individuals quickly stand out among their brethren, making them ideal candidates for biochemical Ogryn neural enhancement, or BONE for short. Recipients of such procedures generally refer to themselves as boneheads and possess enhanced cognitive capabilities well beyond those of an unaltered specimen. Many are able to remember their own names, count some of their fingers, or even make tactical decisions beyond hitting things, capabilities that quickly mark them as ineligible for position of limited authority. Boneheads are often the brains of their unit, and other Ogryns look to them for leadership, both on and off the battlefield. To other Ogryns, the fact that a bonehead even holds his rank is often reason enough to obey, and most are content to trust that anyone who remembers as much as a bonehead probably knows best anyways. As such, a boneheads unit often has few disciplinary problems and a clearly established hierarchy, assuming everyone remembers what they were supposed to do during any given time. Boneheads are brutal but effective leaders, bellowing orders over a din of combat and punctuating their shouts with vicious blows from oversized weapons. Where the average Ogryn is clumsy and ungainly, boneheads are much more coordinated than their primitive brethren and able to wield weapons with surprising dexterity, though their inherent clumsiness can never be completely eradicated. Despite their abilities, they are not particularly well equipped compared to other Austro-Militarum units, often fighting with the same weaponry as their unaugmented brethren. The main difference between a bonehead and his squad mates is the cerebral implants and modifications to their thick skulls. Despite their crude and sturdy appearance, these implants are actually quite sophisticated and capable of withstanding a fairly substantial amount of punishment, particularly useful when such a device is borne by an Ogryn. In combat, the procedure enacted upon a bonehead's brain are put to the ultimate test as they confront numerous decisions and obstacles of command head on. However, their determination and inhuman stubbornness often see them through such situations, while their unique physiology more than compensates for any lapses in discretion or judgment. As a result, an experienced bonehead is often capable of leading his fellow abhumans, more or less, where he told them to with little practice. Despite their intelligence, boneheads naturally exhibit many qualities that define a good leader. They tend to be driven individuals, stubborn to a fault, and unwilling to back down or admit defeat in even the most hopeless situations. Such dedication is often born of absolute faith in their superiors, whom boneheads trust implicitly and without reservation. They're also not afraid to lead from the front, providing an example to their fellow Ogryn and encouraging them with a simple, intuitive commands accompanied by bursts of fire from their ranged weapons. It is debatable whether this is learned behavior or simple necessity. However, despite their training and modifications, no amount of cerebral tinkering can completely eliminate a bonehead's base instincts, and even the most intelligent individuals suffer from bouts of savagery. Now, the Ogryn you wish to discuss is probably the most famous and hails from Catachan. But tell me something, Yuksen. Is he a bonehead himself?
Well, first of all, he doesn't necessarily hail from Catachan. He was just first assigned to the Catachan unit.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if I recall right, all Ogryns are from like a couple of planets, right?
Planets.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he technically, at this point, he hails from Catachan, right? Because he's there.
Well, he is not just your average bonehead. He is a living legend. He is an Ogryn whose fighting abilities as an Astra-Militarum soldier are almost as astonishing as mental development that can only be called precocious for one of his subspecies. Nork Deadeye was selected by the Schola Progenium to serve in the Astra-Militarum because he was so smart he could write his name.
Wait a minute. I heard he could write N for Nork.
Yes, a mighty feat for any Ogryn. And he could count to 4.
He couldn't use even all of his fingers?
Well,
on one hand?
No.
Uh-huh.
But he could speak fluently and understand orders without hesitation or difficulty. This being a rare milestone in Ogryn development, as the majority of Ogryns find these tasks very difficult, if not impossible.
Yeah, that is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
He was taken out of the normal stream of Imperial Guard warfare and underwent biochemical neural enhancements as well as extensive martial training. Now, Nork is a genius by Ogryn standards.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And his first assignment was to guard the life of Colonel Grease, commander of the 2nd Catachan Regiment, and he did so faithfully. Yet, while Grease was as vocally warlike as any good Catachan officer should be, he was old and physically frail. The men of the regiment soon became used to the old colonel bellowing orders from the shelter of Nork's massive frame. The Ogryn's ripper gun mowing down the foe with shredded bursts as shots intended for his charge rebounded harmlessly from his bulky armor. The sight of the colonel and his Ogryn bodyguard became a familiar one during the Second Catacom's 4-year-long campaign on Baelor. The bone-thin colonel bawling out his orders while shells burst around him, and bullets sometimes even ricocheting off Norkstedt's skull. Colonel Corrace implicitly trusted Nork with his life, for good cause, because Nork saved the colonel and friend on many occasions. Most notably at the disaster at Breakback Hill, also known as Hill Gamma Zero. Nedog's reputation was cemented when he carried the badly wounded Grease to safety through hostile territory, dragging the wreckage of the colonel's Chimera transport behind him for cover the entire way, whilst being shot at by thousands of enemy troops, and seemingly feeling no pain.
I wonder how much of that Chimera was left.
Well, I mean, the thousands of enemy troops, how many of them actually had weapons that could puncture the transport?
Well, no, I mean, I'm just on the concept anyways. If he's in one arm anyways, he's carrying this guy, and the other, he's dragging a Chimera with him anyways. I wonder how much weight was actually left of that Chimera. I mean, it sounds impressive if it was just like they shot out one of the treads, so that's why I couldn't move. It's less impressive if all that was left anyways was just like a single sheet of metal. So he's just holding that up like a shield.
Well,
That's why I said I wonder how much was left.
I assume there'd have to be a decent amount at least.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe like half of it was left, or maybe one side of it, so he could like really get a good grip on it, so he could pull it. But regardless, anyways, I mean, if we're kind of both on the same thought process on that, that's damned impressive.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like tons of weight that you're dragging with you. But sorry, go ahead.
Since that bloody conflict, Nork's skills as a bodyguard have been in great demand. His loyalty is beyond question, and the hulking Ogryn would rather sustain terrible wounds than permit a single scratch upon his master. When the orc warboss, Uglurk Git Smasher, and a mob of his hardest meganobs overran the command dugout at the Battle of Chadba Bridge, Nork was the only one to stand his ground beside his ward, Ven Vambold. During the ensuing brawl, Dedog bullied his way into the orc's midst and subjected the Xenos warboss to a headbutt so ferocious that the monstrous orc was hurled from the dugout to its death in a sizzling acid of the Chadba River far below. The remaining orcs were totally awestruck and retreated rather than face the angry Ogryn in further combat.
That is so orky.
The headbutt so much that the guy goes flying off into a river. Yeah, that would be quite impressive for anybody.
Yeah, but I mean, well, no, I mean, you know, remember when we talked about the orcs? One of the ways that they kind of determine, anyways, who is tougher is headbutting competitions. So the fact that this guy, an Ogryn, was able to headbutt a war boss that badly, anyways, and ended up killing him doing it. Like, I honestly, I don't know if they retreated in fear. It was just more along the lines of the thing is an orc in disguise.
Yeah,
it's Gork. That's the vision of Gork. I just was just gonna beg the question. Okay, so I got a question for you here, real quick. Who do you think is actually stronger, an orc or an Ogryn?
Well, it depends on how far up you go with an orc.
Oh, I thought you might say that. Your average orc, like your average orc, you know, like war guy.
He would probably be weaker than an Ogryn.
Right. But once you get into knobs, so when you're thinking about like a knob,
that'd probably be more close to equal, maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe equal. But once you get to war boss, that's the thing that's shocking about this. War bosses, I mean, war bosses are problems for dreadnoughts. They get big and so, so which makes this even more impressive. But
yes,
sorry, I just thought it was kind of interesting. The more that I was reading about this guy, like he sounds a lot like an orc.
Yeah. If you think about it, Ogryns sound a lot like orcs. In fact,
it's almost like the human version of an orc. They mutated backwards. Yeah, well, not mutated. They evolved backwards into an orc, which is just bizarre. I thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway, sorry. Carry on with Nork, sir.
Okay. Nork's own body has proven time and again to be the most effective shield an Imperial Guard officer can have against enemy fire. Nork will do his utmost to protect his master from harm, even going so far as to throw himself in front of enemy fire. On the world of Folax Foal, Nork selflessly leapt on top of an enemy grenade that would have otherwise killed Commander Richep, crushing both the grenade and the grenadier, who threw it to bloody pulp beneath his massive bulk. The resultant explosion was muffled by Nork's body, yet the Ogryn bodyguard seemingly noticed his resulting shrapnel wounds with only passing curiosity. Nork has personally saved the lives of over 100 Imperial Guard officers, and by doing so has been instrumental in securing victories on dozens of worlds. The Ogryn has a large collection of medals, laurels, citations, and personal gifts. Nork cares not for trinkets and baubles. He continues to serve rather for the content feeling he gets when fighting alongside a good friend. While although unquestionably loyal, Nork is definitely no leader. Throughout his long career, he has guarded officers with remarkable military acumen, tactical genius, and an innate understanding of the Astra Militarum war machine. Unfortunately, none of this has ever rubbed off on the hulking Ogryn. His singular...
It's like, so, Nork, you want to explain to me the hammer and the anvil? Yeah. One thing you hit, the other thing, right? Yeah. Oh, okay. Go back to eating that potato there. Okie dokie. Although they don't sound, every time that I think of an Ogryn, I always think it sounds like an orc, and it really doesn't. But
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Can talk more like this instead.
Yeah, that's actually not bad. Not bad, Yuksen. Not bad at all.
The singular duty demands all of his attention, and has done for the entirety of his illustrious service. In those rare instances when the subject of his protection is grievously wounded and unable to maintain their command, allied soldiers may appeal to Nork for orders. After all, he is typically the most decorated and experienced veteran in a battalion. Such requests, however, are in vain. In Nork's simple mind, he still has but one duty, and he will continue to protect the fallen officer until he's told to do otherwise. Fortunately, having an unconscious officer draped across his shoulders does little to hamper Nork's ability to butcher the enemy. Dozens of war zones that would have descended into anarchy have instead seen the banners of Imperial victory raised high thanks to Nork's constant, selfless heroism. During the brief periods of peace between deployments, Nork experiences chronic discomfort whenever compelled to accompany his latest master to a social function or parade drill. However, such embarrassments only encourage Nork to fight all the harder when he returns to the field of battle, determined to prove his worth and bask in the satisfying glow of being the Imperial God's finest bodyguard. So, before we move on to the short lads known as Ratlings, what's your opinion on this mighty warrior?
He's kind of one of a kind, isn't he? I mean, yeah. When it comes to the Imperium, I can't really think of anybody that he relates to. I mean, maybe Stone-Tooth Harkin, but Harkin's significantly smarter. And
no, I do think that Nork could definitely take him in an arm wrestle.
Yeah. Well, and Bragg, probably both of them on one side anyway. Well, part of me also kind of wonders, anyways, why they don't end up teaming up as often, anyways, with like the Space Marines, because you think that they would kind of be able to keep up, right? I mean, when you look at the Imperium, the greatest shock troopers of the Imperium are the Astartes, correct?
Right. Why would you have them teamed up with Ogryns?
I don't know. Just this is like, I mean, it just add an extra punch to it.
It's like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. Huh? Okay, never mind. Let's just forget this.
Well, I mean, that is the biggest problem with them is their intelligence. I mean, even as shock troops. Yeah. I mean, the whole concept of a shock troop is, to move fast and forward, but these guys, just kind of are so stupid. It doesn't seem like they're even, it takes a lot to get them to even do that.
Yeah.
So
There's only been one case that I'm aware of where they've been able to actually, be literate, like be
really,
able to read and write.
really,
It's a more recent occurrence that's happened after the Great Rift. Her name's Cassia, and is
oh,
currently, of course, under the Inquisition's supervision. Uh,
but she's an
uh,
inquisitor, right?
no, Cassia
Cassia.
is an Inquisitor. No,
Oh, what is she?
an Ogryn,
Oh, so
which
it's all about
somehow has psyker abilities, which is something that
that's
Ogryns
just
aren't supposed to be possible of.
right. I was gonna say that is just weird. Well, maybe that's why she can read and write
Yeah,
because
that's one of the things
of the
that
war.
suspect.
Although, okay, we didn't really talk about them because, well, quite frankly, we're talking about the Imperium. But Ogryns have been known also to turn to chaos, correct?
Well, if they have been, they're basically just I will fight for these people because I can.
So okay, so well, it's so when they fight for chaos, it's kind of very similar to the same thing, anyways, that happens to the ones that fight for the Imperium. They just really quickly, anyways, when they get a hold of them, they kind of indoctrinate them into chaos, kind of like how the Imperium indoctrinates them into the Imperial Creed, so that they kind of
Yeah,
get this background, and then they become just these, these very loyal, dogged soldiers. So when it
right.
comes to chaos, it's kind of the same concept, but it's like on farther distant worlds. And you've got a few variations, like for instance, the brutes, the berserkers, and the plague ogryns. Wonder which group the plague ogryns are for. What do you think, Yuksen?
I don't know.
I'm going with
Maybe
Slanesh.
the one who's green and kind of fat
Kind of fat.
has
No,
a
yeah, definitely
cauldron.
Burger. So yeah, I mean, yeah. The reason we didn't talk about it much is because we're talking about the, Austro Militarum. But just know, anyways, that there are ogryns very much just like humans, anyways, that fight for chaos. And like I mentioned before, quite frankly, the ogryns remind me of human orcs.
Right.
I mean, just their concept, and as you know, anyways, orcs aren't really the smartest of the
Yeah.
Xenos races. They kind of fit very well in there. Now, I also kind of wondered, anyways. So we've talked about them, anyways, as fighters. As far as you know, did the ogryns, are they ever used as like schleppers?
Schleppers.
Yes, schleppers. People that schlep things. The
You
guys
mean
that load and offload stuff on like ships and stuff. I figured they'd be pretty good at that too
I
because they're so
assume that
strong.
they could be used like that.
Or is it just that they're too dumb and they're
But
too violent?
yeah, I think that's about it. They're
Okay.
too dumb and violent. Hence
Okay.
why
So
Kane has mentioned the fact on several cases where they have, like, on the back of fertilizer and stuff like that, keep away from children and ogryns.
and ogres. All right. Well, before we move on, I do have another question for you. So we talked about, anyways, who's stronger, an orc or an ogryn. What do you think, anyways, about an Astartes or an ogryn? Who do you think's stronger?
Stardays.
Astartes? Yeah, I was thinking kind of the same thing. But I think, anyways, it'd be closer than a lot of people would think.
Well, yeah.
Like if they were in an arm wrestling competition, I think it'd be closer than you'd think. But I do think, anyways, the Astartes would win.
Well, I think we have covered the ogryns enough. Let's discuss the exact opposite abhuman to an ogryn, the Ratlings.
Fantastic.
Now, the imperial world known as Orn's World is home to the Ratlings. It is located in the Segmentum Obscurus. Ratlings are the smallest type of abhuman known to the Imperium, their ancestors having become stunted by thousands of standard years of inbreeding on worlds with climates and environments even more conducive to human life than ancient Terra and possessed of abundant harvests. Ratlings are short and squat, although not strong when compared to normal baseline humans. They're idle, hedonistic, gregarious, overly friendly, and sexually promiscuous.
You know what, Yuksen? There's nothing like getting hit on by Rattling. It's one of the funniest things ever.
Yes, well, their lives are spent eating until sick, drinking copious amounts of intoxicating beverages, and procreating uncontrollably, almost like abhuman rabbits. These small, loud, hungry, and lecherous creatures are called rentlings, stunties, halflings, and ratlings by other humans, among other less speakable things. Although ratlings make generally poor frontline warriors, the Imperium still has a use for them, and they are often recruited into the Imperial Guard as snipers, one of the battlefield roles in which they excel. Their role extends to infiltrators who can traverse the war zone in relatable discretion. In those roles, they operate independently of the rest of the Imperial Guard force and are equipped with sniper rifles and flak armor. Teams of Ratling sharpshooters are often divided into smaller units placed directly under command of regimental officers, each put in widespread array of strategical locations providing a commanding field of covering fire. They are known to be disparaged against by the majority of the baseline human regiments, although many of them could attribute their own survival to the cover fire of Ratling regiments. Ratlings are also well known for their culinary abilities and often serve as cooks off the battlefield. Now, some Ratlings take advantage of their position as company cooks to acquire extra supplies to sate their voracious appetites. Others extend these benefits to their foster regiments for a price, their kitchens serving as fronts for their illegal activities. Their abilities as fences, thieves, and black marketeers find them acceptance from the men they serve alongside, as they offer a wide range of goods, from extra rations to drugs and alcohol, and even non-standard issue weapons common among veteran soldiers. Conversely, it's documented that guardsmen who give too much grief in their immense prejudice towards Ratlings find themselves mysteriously short of ammunition on the battlefield, preyed upon not only by the enemy finding an opening, but also by the mocking eyes of their diminutive tormentors, watching through telescopic lenses someplace far away. Now, last week you mentioned you like these guys, so I got to ask, why?
Are you kidding me? These guys sound awesome.
Let's face it, they're halflings / hobbits of 40k.
Okay. Oh, all right. So Terran 42, Tolkien anyways did hobbits. And then I believe D&D did halflings, correct? That's kind of where their origins are.
Yeah, kind of somewhere around there.
And D&D anyways, when they took halflings, they're really pretty much hobbits, but they kind of gave them some different attributes, like they're normally pretty good thieves and they're sneaky. Yeah. These kind of things. And the Ratlings and so the Ratlings, if you take both of these kind of two fictional things on Terran 42, I would say they're more like halflings than they are hobbits.
Yeah.
Because they are considerably sneakier and better shots and whatnot, but they're so much more by the sounds of it. It's just like, it's just like it made them epically better. But who wouldn't want a Ratling in their unit? They're great cooks. They can scrounge anything up you want, and they're crack shots. Who wouldn't want a Ratling in their unit?
If you have stuff that you want to hold on to, though.
Okay, well, it doesn't seem like they steal from their own units. It seems like they actually help their own units for a price, but they help them. Not only that, but they seem significantly more good-humored than a lot of these other folks, anyways, in the Imperial Army. I don't know. The fact that the simple fact, anyways, that they're good cooks should make them actually like probably one of the most wanted people in the Imperial Army. Instead of getting biscuits and water again, or oatmeal and water again, you're getting like roast turkey or Grox burgers.
Well, that's assuming that they have those supplies on hand.
Yeah, but it sounds like these guys are just about as good as Jurgen at acquiring things. So I would put it past them. Not only that, but like I said, anyways, they're crack shots. They're some of the best snipers, anyways, in the Imperium.
Right.
So that aspect of being able to, plug something, anyways, at 100 yards and save your bacon, and then give you bacon. The win-win. But yeah, honestly, that's why I like the Ratlings. What do you think of them? Okay, first off, anyways, I'm pretty sure, anyways, that your favorite abhumans are the Ogryns, right?
Well, my favorite we aren't talking about, but out of the ones that
Oh,
we are talking about, yes.
okay, yeah, we can't talk about the stunties.
Not
Those are your
stunties, they're
favorite?
squats.
Stunties,
There's a
squats,
difference.
same difference. Which, okay, so real quick, anyways, we can go over the stunties real quick. So the squats, they, as far as I know, anyways, they've kind of been exterminated, haven't they? They used to be an abhuman, but I don't know if they're really around anymore.
There are a couple of convailing theories. One of the things is that one of the theories is that basically they're taken back over by the Imperium after a massive loss of life, which doesn't surprise me. Not due to the Militarum or the Imperium, but
Well, there's that other theory that it was because of the Imperium too.
yeah.
But
There are a lot of theories running around, but they are still around.
okay, but they're not as predominant, especially in the Imperial Guard, right? They used to have their own like auxilia in the Imperial Guard.
I know that they did have a regiment that showed, yes, they did have some in the Imperial Guard. I assume they were used as like mercenaries, but
Okay.
I know that they're referenced as being utilized during one of the wars of Armageddon.
Okay. So, I mean, that's all fair. Well, other than the first war of Armageddon, no, they're all actually pretty recent, right? The three wars of Armageddon, which we'll be talking about in January. I mean, the first war of Armageddon, Grimnar was in, right?
Yeah.
So it can't be that old. So yeah, okay. So they are still around. Fair enough. But they are your favorite, or the squats?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the ones that we're talking about, the Ogryns are probably your favorite, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So why do you like the Ogryns more than the Ratlings?
Well, for a reason that you've kind of mentioned before, they're kind of like the Imperium's version of orcs.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Sadly enough, they can be denser than orcs.
Well, okay. Another reason why I actually like the Ratlings more is because there's actually a couple of great Ratlings that I enjoyed reading about.
Really? Well, who are these great Ratlings, brother?
Well, there are only a couple of famous, okay, fine, notorious Ratlings in the Imperium of Man, and that would be Stumper Muckstart and Big B Quickfingers. Now, Stumper Muckstart showed remarkable abilities from the moment he was recruited from his home planet on Orn's world. He quickly established himself as the best shot in the regiment, earning considerable amounts by challenging rivals to outshoot it. Soon, he had a racket going and became rich overnight as a result of the gambling associated with his trick shooting displays. After a particularly impressive night, when he shot 3 spinning 5-credit pieces out of the air with 3 shots while blindfolded, his activities unfortunately came to the attention of the regiment's commissar. Wah, wah, wah. Therefore, Stumper was recruited into a special sniper unit on the spot. His past misdeeds were forgiven once he had volunteered all of his ill-gotten gains to charitable concerns, a gesture which still leaves painful memories. Mention of this is the only thing known to spoil his aim.
That doesn't seem right. He won that money fair and square.
I know, right? I mean, sure, they were idiots anyways to bet him on this, but I mean, come on. I mean, he did, right? He should have won that. He should have kept it. Anyways, moving on. Now, as Yuksen so eloquently described, Ratlings are rightly renowned for their talent with long rifles and sniper weaponry of all kinds, and it is said that even as whelplings, they can shoot the flies off the back of a grox at 100 paces. In the ruined cities and wilderness war zones of the Spinward Front, Imperial Guard regiments are lucky if they receive support from Ratling platoons and squads. These valuable resources handed out sparingly by Lord Marshal Gonzoric. They're even luckier still if they happen to find themselves fighting alongside Big B Quickfinger, a veteran of the first battles of Kulf. Big B made his first kill within 10 minutes of stepping off his lander. No sooner had he been handed his weapon when he spied a secessionist scout observing the mustering. snapping off a shot at some 800 yards and dropping the scout. He reportedly remarked the weapon was pulling a little to the left and set about adjusting the sight. Since his time on Kolth, Bigby has traveled to many of the war zones of the Spinwood Front, racking up an impressive number of kills, including numerous high-ranking members of the Severan Dominant and several Orc bosses. He has also aided in the support of the Specialist Forces, such as the Stormtrooper Regiment, providing vital covering fire for incursions into enemy territory. This has earned him the name Quickfinger for his lightning reflexes and feather touch on the trigger. This skilled sniper always knows just when to squeeze off the shot to bring down his prey. Well, before we move on to the last group of abhumans we will be discussing today, what do you think of these Ratlings?
Well, I feel bad for the first Ratling that you mentioned.
I know, that to me anyways, that's a little cheesy.
Well, I can see it happening, though.
Well, okay, so
it's sad.
if I recall right, technically gambling is illegal within the ranks, yes?
Yeah, it may be frowned upon.
Okay, I was going to say, or it's frowned upon. But it's definitely, anyways, not, if Commissar sees you gambling anyways, it's normally bad things are going to happen, right?
I think part of it's probably the fact that he was using military equipment to do it.
No, that could be it too.
I'm pretty sure that isn't his personal las weapon.
Well, yes, but at the same time, it's not like he's running out of ammunition. It is a las rifle, but no, I mean, it's not like anyways. If a commissar comes across you gambling, anyways, it's not like he's gonna go, good luck, roll sevens, or whatever. Yeah. It normally means people are scurrying, trying to get away from the situation.
Right.
Yeah, so I can see why, but at the same time, it's still, anyways. I mean, he won it fair and square. I mean, he didn't cheat. I mean,
that
I
wouldn't know it.
Past him. Yeah, I was going to say, I wouldn't put it past him. Yeah. Anyways, what else do you think?
This is where we find out that blindfold had little slits in it. You know,
so you can actually see it.
When it comes to, I'm not sure if you mentioned this in your tellings about the 12th and 13th Black Crusades, but it's kind of a good thing that they breed like rabbits, because they were like 90% of them was wiped out.
Yeah.
Planet.
I believe it was the 12th Crusade. It would really hit hard.
12th, and then I think either during the 13th or during the 13th also they were attacked, not by Abaddon, but by a Chaos Warlord. And they got nearly wiped out again. But before we go, what's the last group that we're going to be talking about here?
Well, now the last group of abhumans is not discussed much in the Imperium, and that would be the Beastmen.
The Beastmen? I thought they died out long ago.
The Inquisition has tried to purge them many times, and although they have not truly succeeded, there are far fewer of them now working for the Imperium, and those that don't. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Now, the Beastmen, also known as Homo sapiens varietas, are abhumans descended from a baseline human stock who combine the physical appearance of humans and certain Terran animals, usually ungulates, such as goats or rams. The Beastmen do not necessarily look alike, and different animal traits can manifest themselves in each individual. But apart from this form of phenotypical variation, they are a genetically stable human subspecies, and are considered to be a form of abhuman rather than an actual mutant. Now, the origin of the Beastmen is unknown, but it was likely that they are the result of an experiments in genetic engineering stretching back to the Dark Age of technology, before the birth of the Imperium of Man.
Of course, it all comes back to the Dark Age of technology. Everything. Dark Age of technology.
No.
New weapon. Dark Age of technology.
No. It's no. What it is anything that they don't understand. Well, it was the Dark Age of technology. Anything they can't understand is like, well, that was obviously the Emperor and his good graces during the time of the Imperium of Man.
But we don't quite understand it. Dark Age of technology.
Exactly.
That's a good thing. Dark Age of technology. Okay.
Get that into your thick skull. Anyways, Although I will say, anyways, other Imperial scholars claim that the Beastmen are abhumans whose unusual forms were the result of exposure to the unnatural influence of the warp, but the subspecies somehow managed to maintain an unusual degree of genetic stability across generations, unlike other such mutants born of the power of chaos. In temperament as well as appearance, these abhumans are often bestial and possess a reputation for crudity, aggression, and bad discipline. Starting the late 30th millennium, Beastmen were often recruited into the ranks of the Imperial Army as part of a massive galactic expansion of the burgeoning Imperium during the Great Crusade, which began after 798.M30. Beastmen in the Imperial Army were regarded as useful, if highly undisciplined warriors, and were ideal for suicidal assaults, where brawn rather than tactical intelligence was required. Other Imperial troops disliked them intently as they were quite rowdy, unsanitary, and generally unpleasant for baseline humans to deal with. Following the events of the galaxy-wide civil war known as the Horus Heresy, and the subsequent restructuring of the Imperial Armed Forces, the Ultramarines Legion Primarch Robute Gilman, according to the dictates of his magnum opus, the Codex Astartes, during the time of the rebirth, Beastmen regiments were retained in the newborn Astra Militarum, where they were often led by the largest and most powerful of their kind, known as Packmasters. Those Beastmen who had been introduced by the Imperial cult by the missionaries of the Adeptus Ministorum possess a simple but fierce devotion to the Emperor of Mankind and regard him as a vengeful god who demands tribute in the form of the blood of his enemies. These fanatically religious Beastmen are driven by the need to atone for their original sin of being born mutants by fighting the service to the Emperor. In recent centuries, there have been a political shift with the Imperium, and Beastmen are no longer seen in Imperial military service. No doubt the more Puritan elements of the Inquisition convinced the Departamento Militarum that Beastmen could not be so radically different from the genetic human baseline without having been in some way affected by the taint of chaos. In the 41st millennium, Beastmen are now classified as mutants, and as a result, the subject of severe Imperial prosecution and have been placed on the Register of Proscribed Citizens, Class A-G worlds, by the Adeptus Arbites. This effectively precludes them from settlement on or transportation to or from more than 300,000 worlds of the Imperium and forbids their conscription as part of an Imperial tithe obligation. All of this is a sure sign that they may soon lose their official abhuman status completely and the reclassification as a true mutants. These creatures are often hunted down during anti-mutant programs conducted by the Adeptus Arbites on those worlds where populations of Beastmen are known to exist. Because of this, most Beastmen have flocked to the banners of chaos, be it out of hatred for humanity who has hunted them down like, well, beasts, or a simple want to belong somewhere. Unfortunately, humanity's persecution of the Beastmen has made them a horrifying enemy that the gods of chaos use with relish against mankind. Yet some Beastmen have found another way to serve the Imperium on the outskirts of society, and that would be as bounty hunters. One of which is the famed Gore Half-Horned. And here to tell you all about it is Yuksen.
Thank you, Zeckthar. Now, Gore Half-Horned is a Necromundan Beastman bounty hunter who offers his service in Hive Primus. No one knows where the mysterious Gore came from or how a mutant was able to attain a bounty hunter license. Other than the fact that it's Necromunda and it seems like anybody can do anything there. Very depressing place.
It's kind of like pirates anyways. The rules, well, they're more like guidelines. That's Necromunda for you. Want to get away with murder?
They are guidelines. They're more like a little squiggly mark somewhere.
Murder is illegal here. It's more of a guideline. Depends on how you do it and who you do it in front of.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
And who it was. What is known as Gore's mere appearance strikes fear in the Underhive, but equally it makes him a target for every raving zealot he encounters. As a sanctioned bounty hunter, Gore is entitled, in theory at least, to go wherever he will in pursuit of his targets. In reality, he has often found himself the quarry, though so far none have bested him. Because it's so rare for a Beastman to be sanctioned as bounty hunter, Gore has become the subject of numerous legends throughout the Underhive. Some say he was once a member of the Abhuman Auxilia, attached to an Astra Militarum regiment, and the sole survivor of a battle of apocalyptic proportions. Others whisper that he was once in the employ of an inquisitor, whose service he fled for a life among the damned. Some have even claimed that he was not born an Abhuman at all, the noble scion who developed hideous mutations in his adolescence, and fled down Hive lest he be put to death by his own kin. None dares to inquire of Gore himself what the truth might be, for all know his response would be swift and lethal.
Interesting. Well, before we say adieu, what do you think of the Beastmen and Gore himself, brother?
I think they've gotten a bad rap.
I was about to say, I think they got the short end of the stick on this one.
Yeah. That's the phrase I was trying to think of.
Now, mind you, anyways, the reason why I mentioned that a lot of them have gone over to Chaos is because they have their own, like, units and regiments at this point in Chaos. That's how many of them have flocked to Chaos, because humanity has tried to purge them so many times and get rid of them. Which is
kind of like
sad.
It's kind of like Renegade Space Marines. So just like, yeah, they tend to turn to Chaos. Well, the reason why is because they're treated like they are Chaos to begin with.
The reason why is because you keep trying to shoot them.
Claiming that you are, well, might as well be.
Yeah. Might as well join a side anyways that's got a little bit more, heft behind it. It's a cold, dark universe out there. Be all alone,
Yeah.
I mean, quite frankly, and here's something that I always found kind of interesting is that, so the Emperor, through all of his faults that we've talked about, one of the things that he just never would tolerate were mutants. Anything that had to do with chaos, right? We need to expunge this.
Well, except,
the
the Navigators. Or, well, except, Magnus.
His own sons.
Or, well...
Well, okay, for the general populace, let's put it that way. The general populace, if you were a mutant, then he would get rid of you. Kind of thing. Yeah, ironically, he kept the Beastmen around. Now, I don't know if that's just simply because he's just like, well, they're just, more meat for the meat grinder, and they don't run, so we can use them effectively. Or he, quite frankly, looked at them and said, they're abhumans. They're not mutants of the warp.
Well, it sounds like one of the things they did basically with them was just go, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take them and just use them as suicide squads. Just run them out there.
But he wouldn't do that with a mutant. He would just destroy the mutant. So to me, anyways, that kind of makes me think, anyways, that he actually looked at them as being abhuman, part of humanity, which should have been documented. If it had been documented, none of this would take place. They wouldn't keep trying to purge them. Well, I probably still would. Yeah, because they do look rather weird.
Yeah.
But, okay, so
like,
before
they used to be, but now, no, now they aren't.
Okay, but before we take off anyways, what do you think of Gore?
I think he is a straight-up character that makes entire sense for how his kind has been treated.
Except for he's still working within the Imperium as a bounty hunter, mind you.
As a bounty hunter.
Yeah. And he looks like, anyways, that he would, like, if he was in a different universe and he was like if he was part of Terran 42's Star Wars, how in The Emperor Strikes Back, and Darth Vader is hiring all those bounty hunters, he has that bounty hunter meeting.
Yeah.
Gore Half Horn, anyways, would look pretty awesome, anyways, in that group. I mean, he would definitely, anyways, he'd definitely turn the eye, anyways, kind of like Boba Fett did. It's like, oh, that's awesome. I mean, on that note, we're out of time. Sorry we went a little long this week, folks, but I hope you enjoyed this vlog. So much so that you join us next week for our favorite topic, notable characters.
Awesome. Can't wait to talk about them. But if you are still listening to this, then if you could be so kind as to push that subscribe, like, or follow button. If you wish to help us expand our work on 40k lore, by all means, support us by joining our membership program. on our YouTube channel, Tales of Asharaka.
Indeed. Have a great day. And as always, until next time, this is Zeckthar
And Yuksen.
signing off.